That's all I needed. That's all I needed for him to do that. And it became personal with me.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
Oh, my Lord! Somebody should have done this a long time ago, and I'm gonna do it. Oh!
Damn, this is not the answer!
You're next, mister. You understand me?
Yes, sir.
Get off me!
Stop it!
Behaviors!
Fuck, boy!
Not impressed.
You serious?
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show, and I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. Last week, we discussed college football week 2, now in the books, and now week 3 is in the books, and then we also discussed week 1 in the NFL, and that's exactly what we're going to do, continuing on forward through the college football and NFL seasons this year. We got our college football week 3 recap, and then our week 4 preview, and then we also got our NFL week 2 recap today, and then a bunch of other smaller stories going on in the NFL. Some are bigger than others, and then we also are going to talk about the Heisman Watch again in college football. So we got a full slate today on the Lake Show, and I really appreciate you all, as always, making me a part of your day again. We're really growing over here, and I can't thank you all enough for the love and support in recent episodes and just overall in general for the channel. I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again, once again. And as you all know, I'm a Bucked Up ambassador, so use promo code SHOW32, get yourself 20% off any and all Bucked Up pre-workout orders at buckedup.com. So let's get started for today. So obviously I talked about how last week we went over week 2 in college football, and now today we are going over week 3 in college football, and then I'll give you a couple games going forward, but we got a couple college football stories that we're going to talk about today. So just as a quick overview, so last week we had Kansas State going up against Arizona. Kansas State wins 31-7, and then we had Alabama playing Wisconsin at Wisconsin, and Alabama handled business 42-10. Jalen Milroe finished that game with 196 yards passing, 75 yards rushing, and 5 total touchdowns. And early on in the game, quarterback for Wisconsin, Tyler Van Dyke, went down with an injury. And here's the thing about that. This game was a lot closer than the final score indicates, and that's because quarterback Tyler Van Dyke went down with an injury. Injury to the quarterback, it doesn't matter if it's high school, college, pro, it doesn't matter. If you lose your quarterback, you're not going to win games. It's as simple as that. Oftentimes, backups are not mentally prepared, and oftentimes backups are not as skilled as the starting quarterbacks that are going out there to play the game. And that's just a basic obvious point that I just made. But when it comes to Wisconsin, they were already playing that entire game well up to Tyler Van Dyke's injury. They really were. And it's also important to note that I don't necessarily think Alabama is the dominant juggernaut that it's made out to be. I mean, they did struggle against USF. They did struggle against South Florida. I talked about it last week that South Florida, for all intents and purposes, should have won that game. I didn't agree with them kicking a field goal so far into Alabama territory where, you have a running quarterback and he was having his way for the most part, at least scrambling around, making plays last week. So obviously I disagreed with the decision to cut the lead to 2 points, because from there on out, Alabama just ran up the score. And I think a decision like that, that you have all the momentum on your side, and USF pissed it away, if we're being honest. And now USF plays Miami this upcoming week. As a Miami fan, I am a little bit nervous about that. Probably the same way I was nervous about Miami going to Florida, the Gators, just because it's so unpredictable. It's teams that you see each other quite often. Now, Miami sees USF more often than it sees the Gators, just because of location purposes, I think. I don't honestly know. I wish Miami would play all the Florida teams every single season. See who the champion of Florida would be. But moral of the story, there's no reason to take any team lightly. And I think Alabama set out with a purpose this past weekend. But I don't think the final score necessarily shows everything that Bama is capable of, or the fact that Bama is not necessarily the juggernaut it's made out to be. Jalen Milroe, he's great. He really is. He's a good quarterback. I have him in my updated Heisman watch. He's a fine quarterback. I wish he was better in the pocket, but again, he shows flash. There's a reason that Alabama made it to the college football playoff last year. There's a reason they beat Georgia in the SEC title game last year. Jalen Milroe is putting Alabama on his back, and obviously head coach Kalen DeBoer, he's obviously making a name for himself already, filling in the shoes of Nick Saban, arguably the greatest college football coach in history. I don't think anybody's going to dispute that. And if you do, I'm very curious as to what your argument would be. But moral of the story, this game, for the most part, at least in the first half, was a pretty even match between Alabama and Wisconsin. But ultimately, injuries are a part of the game. Injuries happen. It's reality. And Alabama won 42-10. And now I believe they're cruising now into SEC play, I believe. I'll have to check that. But other games we got this past weekend. The Georgia Bulldogs, the number 1 team in the country, damn near got upset by Kentucky. The final score was 13-12, Georgia. I watched this game because everybody loves a good upset in college football. Everybody. I don't even care who it is. You all enjoy games like this. Nail biters, defensive battles, and that's really what SEC football has always been, at least for the better majority of my life. SEC defenses are the closest thing to NFL defenses you're ever going to get, and these two defenses showed out, and I was thoroughly surprised that Kentucky even put up a fight in this game, just because of how bad South Carolina literally 2 weeks ago beat the brakes off of Kentucky. But it goes to show you really how good South Carolina's defensive line is. South Carolina's defensive line is unreal. They did end up losing to LSU. They pissed that game away, but losing your quarterback, South Carolina, they lost Sellers. They're great quarterback, sprinter, everything. They lost him early on in the game, and they had a chance to tie it at the end with that game-tying field goal, but just hooked it left. And LSU ends up winning. But back to Georgia and Kentucky. When you look at Georgia throughout that game, they could not really get anything going on offense, and you already know that Kirby Smart was damn near pulling his hair out on the sidelines. You can see the intensity that Kirby Smart coaches with. You can see the passion in his eyes, and you can see how much he holds his players accountable. I think that's easily that I've argued for a long time that Kirby Smart was one of the top 3 coaches in college football right now, and that was before Nick Saban retired. Now I do think he is the best coach in college football. You could see it, how intense he is on the sidelines, how intense he is with his players. He expects nothing less than perfection on the field. Well, that was anything but in this game. Kentucky controlled the game for the majority of the time. They controlled the game up until 9 minutes left in the game. 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So Kentucky, Georgia ends up getting a rushing touchdown to take the lead 13-12. Here's my thing. You were at if you're Kentucky, you got, I believe, 3 minutes left in the game. You got 3 minutes. You have a 4th and 8 or 4th and 6 at your own 50-yard line. Now, I know typical analytics and common sense tells you to punt the ball away, especially when you have 3 timeouts left. So you have options on the table. But honestly, I disagree with the call to punt the football away, because at that point, Georgia, they did everything they needed to do. They ran the clock out, and Kentucky, they ended up getting the ball back with 15 seconds left. But at that point in time, your options are limited as an offense. Everybody knows that. So why not take your chance then? Why not take your chance with that 3-minute mark in the game where all you needed was really one more first down and you'd be in your kicker's range? He was hitting 50-yarders that entire game. Your kicker did phenomenal that entire game, making 4 field goals up to that point, 4 for 4. So you would have had a 5th option. You would have had a 5th time to get him out there on the field to kick a game winner to upset the number 1 team in the country. So sometimes coaching just baffles me. It really does. Maybe it's not as simple as it is, being a fan of the sport. I feel like a lot of people are like me, where we know what's right and they are always wrong. That's the typical fan perspective when it comes to really any sport. If we're being honest, we all think we can be the coach until we actually have to do it. But for me, I question, I understand why you punt it, because you have 3 timeouts and the 2-minute warning to stop the clock and possibly get the ball back. But I can easily use that argument against Kentucky to go for it, because you would still have those 3 timeouts and you still had the 2-minute warning. So why not take your chance then to pick up a first down and to at least give your kicker a chance to kick the game-winning field goal? Let's say, hypothetically speaking, if Kentucky went for it on that 4th down and they picked it up, they could have easily ran the clock down a little bit. Now, obviously, Georgia still had some timeouts, and they would have the 2-minute warning on their side. Okay, but that's still less time for Georgia to move the ball down the field. Your defense has mainly held the Bulldogs in check all game long. So why wouldn't you take that opportunity to go for it on that 4th down, possibly bleed out a little bit of clock, and then let your kicker go out there and win the game for you? Again, he was already 4 for 4. I have no reason to believe that he wouldn't have made that game-winning field goal. And I have no reason to believe that Kentucky's defense wouldn't have played with a little bit more passion and fight if Georgia had to go down the field to kick a game-winning field goal themselves. So, hey, football's about inches, not feet. Football's about inches. So I don't think it was the right call by Kentucky's head coach to punt it on that 4th and 8. I really don't think it was worth it. Obviously, it wasn't, because they lost the game. But Georgia, where did Georgia go from here? They'll be fine. Georgia's going to be fine. But are they necessarily the juggernaut everybody thinks to be? Maybe, maybe not. I don't necessarily see it. I talked about my top teams in college football, where I was ranking them. That switched around over this past weekend. So, we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit, but number 1, Georgia avoids the upset against Kentucky, 13-12. Texas played the UTSA Roadrunners. Meep, meep. Do not judge me for that. Roadrunner's always been my favorite cartoon character of all time. I had to do it. Don't judge me too hard. But Texas ends up beating UTSA 56-7. Now, interesting story about this game is Quinn Ewers got hurt. Heisman hopeful quarterback Quinn Ewers, and in my opinion, one of the top 3 quarterbacks in college football right now, he goes down with an injury. Well, in comes the prodigal son, Arch Manning. And honestly, he showed out. 223 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, and he also had a 65-yard rushing touchdown. I didn't realize any Manning, whether that be Eli, Archie, or Peyton, I didn't realize any Manning family member had wheels like Arch Manning did. So obviously, we all know Arch Manning is the backup to Quinn Ewers. Everybody was shocked that he didn't transfer, which I partially am, but at the same time, he wants to carve his own path into college football, and eventually he'll probably make it to the NFL. You could see the talent on display, easily. I know it was against UTSA, but you can see why Texas is going to be formidable in years to come. Not only do you have Quinn Ewers, who's a Heisman hopeful quarterback, already made a college football playoff and was one play away from beating Michael Penix Jr. and Washington to move on to the national championship game. But you also have a backup in Arch Manning, 5-star prospect, one of the most highly touted high school quarterbacks ever to come out. And now you have him as your backup. Texas's offense didn't skip a beat when Arch Manning stepped into the starting role. So where do you go from here if you're Texas? Do you ride Quinn Ewers still, or do you turn it over to Arch Manning? Depending on how serious the injury is, maybe even sit him out a week. You don't play Georgia yet. You don't play all these big heavyweight schools in the SEC yet. Maybe let Quinn Ewers sit out one more week and then go from there. Let Arch Manning get one more start under his belt. But right now, let's say hypothetically, Quinn Ewers, they benched him. Or let's say his injury is just nagging longer than it should be. I would still have Texas as my top team in college football right now. So obviously you could tell, I said before that I thought it went, you had 3 teams that separated themselves from the rest of college football. I think it's starting to narrow a little bit. Not necessarily. There's only one team right now that I can consistently say that is the number 1 team in the nation right now. And it's actually simply because Quinn Ewers went down. Why I think Texas is number 1 in the nation, and rightfully so. The new poll came out. Texas is number 1. Georgia drops to number 2. And Ohio State is still number 3. But when you look at this, if your starting quarterback can go down and your offense doesn't skip a beat, guess what? You have probably the best team in college football. And I think that's Texas right now, coached by Steve Sarkisian. Quinn Ewers is a great quarterback. I think he'll be one of the top quarterbacks taken in next year's NFL draft. I really do. But when you look at Arch Manning, I think he'll end up being the best quarterback in college football, probably by a mile. Texas's offense didn't skip a beat. Arch Manning had a hell of an outing after Quinn Ewers went down. I think sky's the limit for this Texas team. My new top 3 when it comes to college football: Texas 1, Georgia 2. No, Texas 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3. Because I'll put Ohio State above Georgia. Their talent is ridiculous on defense, and Will Howard's actually proving me wrong. I think Will Howard's definitely an improvement over Kyle McCord, but he's definitely showing out this year so far. But when it comes to the Buckeyes, I think they're just so well-rounded and so well-coached. I may have smack talk Ryan Day, but he's a formidable coach. He just can't beat Michigan. That's going to change this year. But Texas won simply because they can lose their starting quarterback and not skip a beat. Florida State, are you taking notes? That's how it's done. And then number 2, Ohio State. And then 3, I'll put Georgia. I was thoroughly disappointed with how Georgia played this past weekend, especially against a Kentucky team that got the brakes beat off them by South Carolina, and South Carolina just lost to an inferior LSU team. So that's my new rankings. Texas ends up beating UTSA 56-7. My new top 3 in college football: Texas at 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia at 3. Okay, we got more games to talk about. Miami Hurricanes 62, Ball State 0. Cam Ward had 346 yards passing and 5 touchdowns. Cam Ward is by far and easily the Heisman favorite at this early point in the college football season. You see how he's turned that entire locker room around. He's basically been an improvement over the culture that Mario Cristobal has been building for the better part of 2 years now. And now heading into year 3. Obviously, year 1 with Mario Cristobal, growing pains. That was probably one of the most painful seasons I ever had to sit through as a Hurricane fan. I mean, then again, coaching changes happen, but it's very, very seldom that, it seemed like your team always takes like 20 steps back, and that's how it felt year 1 with Mario Cristobal. I had a feeling that it would happen just because when Mark Richt was head coach at Miami, they went straight from Mark Richt. Obviously, he retired, but I think it was mainly because of health issues. I loved Coach Mark Richt. He was fantastic. He did lead Miami to their first 10-win season in 10 years and to an ACC championship berth, albeit we lost to Clemson and the juggernaut they were at that moment in time. But we went from Mark Richt, he retires. Then we get Manny Diaz. He didn't do terrible, but he couldn't recruit for shit. He couldn't recruit at all. So by the time all those great seniors left Miami and Manny Diaz left, Miami's left with their, with their hands up. Like, where do we go from here? I'm amazed that we still were able to poach Mario Cristobal away from Oregon. I really was. Just came off of a Rose Bowl win with Justin Herbert at quarterback. But we ended up poaching him away. And one thing that has always plagued Miami, at least in recent memory, has been quarterback play. Despite 2020, I'm taking 2020 out of the mix. De'Aaron King from Houston that one year, and then he got injured the next year. He had a great 2020 season. He did. Cam Ward is a different animal compared to any other quarterback that Miami's had in their locker room over the past 20 years. The last great Miami quarterback was Ken Dorsey, and even Brock Berlin was still serviceable and did fantastic for Miami for the most part. But you fast forward to 18 years. 18 years. Miami finally has their guy, and I think Cam Ward is already propelling himself. He's the front runner now to win the Heisman Trophy. You could see, I think his odds are plus 550 right now on FanDuel. But even everybody in college football, even all these big college football talk shows, we all know how good Cam Ward is. Now, they are playing USF this weekend. I'm nervous about that game. I just want to go in there, handle business before we start ACC play. I just want to avoid a heart attack this upcoming weekend. But when it comes to Cam Ward right now, this was the best performance that Miami has put on through the first 3-game stretch in program history. The most points scored through first 3 games in program history, 159 points. And then you also have, I believe they had 700 total yards of offense this past weekend against Ball State. And they couldn't run the ball for the majority of that game. They could not run the ball at all. Miami in the first half, it was all Cam Ward. All Cam Ward, all passing, because they couldn't run the ball. Now, again, I said Miami was 4 deep at running back. They are. They're actually 5 deep at running back with freshman running back Lyle. But when it comes to that entire team as a whole, the front 7 is dominant. And they don't even have their best pass rusher, Ruben Bain, yet. Ruben Bain's dealing with a soft tissue injury, I believe. It'll be a couple weeks until he comes back, but he's healed. They're all healed. Everybody who's injured is healing, in a timely manner, necessarily. But right now, when you look at Miami's front 7, that's where the truest improvement has been for Mario Cristobal. The secondary has always been fine for the most part. I'm discounting the Georgia Tech blunder from last year, which was garbage. But when you look at the front 7, Elijah Alston, the transfer from Marshall, we got Simeon Barrow from Michigan State, Clark from NC State, Tyler Barron coming over from Tennessee. Tyler Barron has been on a tear lately. He might even be as good as Ruben Bain. Ruben Bain, the reigning ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year. Miami's defense is already loaded. They're like 6 or 7 deep right now on the defensive line. And then once Ruben Bain comes back, you got 8 that just are hungry to snuff out the runner of the football and just get after the quarterback. Miami's defense has been thoroughly impressive. I know it's been inferior competition, but I'm sorry. As much as Florida sucks right now. That's still an SEC school, and Georgia would pile drive the majority of the teams that Miami has played early on. Ball State and Florida A&M, the Florida Gators would have beat the brakes off them too, okay? Don't act like Florida is like Duquesne and the FCS. They're not. They're still an FCS. They're still an SEC school, albeit probably the worst SEC school right now. We're going to talk about Florida in a little bit, but a couple other games we're going to get to. Notre Dame 66, Purdue 7. Yeah, Notre Dame's loss last week, they took it personal. As Michael Jordan liked to say, they took it personal and absolutely beat the brakes off of Purdue. I've never seen a team play more pissed off after a loss. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. Notre Dame came out, punched Purdue in the mouth, and just kept wailing on them. So Notre Dame, after that embarrassing loss to NIU, to Northern Illinois a week ago, they come in to at Purdue. They were on the road and handle business 66-7. Another game we're going to talk about. This game was over after the first quarter, and especially over at halftime. Tennessee against Kent State. Tennessee won 71-0. Why Kent State is playing Tennessee, I have no clue. Going on the road to Tennessee also, I don't get that. Like, Kent State as a team, they stink. I don't think there's any reason that Tennessee should have scheduled them. I wonder how much money they paid Kent State to go to Tennessee. I will say Tennessee is turning some heads in the SEC. They might be one of the SEC is going to be a dogfight. You got the Georgia Bulldogs, you got Tennessee Volunteers, you still got Oklahoma, which Oklahoma and Tennessee this upcoming weekend, that'll be a good watch. But anyway, Tennessee, Georgia, Bama, Texas, Oklahoma, and you got South Carolina and LSU still in the mix. Like, it's going to be a dogfight in the SEC. It really is. I'm all here for it, but Tennessee handles business. For whatever reason, they had to play Kent State this year, 71-0. And then a couple other games, we got Ole Miss beating Wake Forest 40-6, Oregon beating Oregon State 49-14. You know, fine. Two games left we're going to talk about. Memphis going on the road to Florida State and beating the Seminoles, forcing them to go 0-3 to start the season. They were ranked 10 in the AP poll at the beginning of the year. Now completely out of the mix, completely out of the ACC championship mix, completely out of the college football playoff conversation. What the hell has happened to Florida State? I can tell you very simply, what is going on. No leader in the locker room, and they fumbled in the transfer portal. They fumbled getting the quarterback right. Jordan Travis was their leader last year. And he damn near led them to the college football playoff and should have if he didn't get injured. Florida State would have been in the college football playoff if Jordan Travis didn't get hurt. We all know this. But I think Florida State is missing that element in the locker room. A bunch of transfers came in the year prior. Keon Coleman, Jared Verse. You know, there's a plethora of others that came in, but those are the two notable ones off the top of my head because they were leaders in the locker room. They demanded your attention. They demanded your respect. They demanded the best out of you. That's why Florida State was so good. They had leadership. They had guys that wanted to put it all out on the field and just achieve something great. Jordan Travis, at quarterback, was there for years. Now in the NFL, but was there for years. And Mike Norvell's a good coach. I've read some early reports that Mike Norvell was going to be on the hot seat. I disagree with that entire notion. He turned around FSU. He turned that program around from the mess Willie Taggart left him. He's a great coach. Mike Norvell, as much as I don't like Florida State at all, I'll respect Mike Norvell being a coach, like their coach. He's not a bad coach whatsoever. He rebuilt Florida State once. He can definitely do it again, but I think he has to have players that are willing to even buy in. If you think about DJ Uiagalelei, he stinks. He cannot push the ball downfield. His confidence is shot. It's all dink and dunk. He has no confidence. It might be time to make a change at the quarterback position, but if you make that change, you can't go back to DJU. If your backup sucks, DJU, you can't put him back in. But I don't necessarily if you can move on from DJU because of how much money you spent to get him there. DJU has been a fumble from the transfer portal, really has been. Florida State's defensive line was hyped up to be the best in college football. That hasn't happened. Now the Seminoles have fallen to 0-3, and Mike Norvell has been put on the hot seat, apparently. I disagree with it because I think he's a great coach. At some point, you have to hold the players accountable. You have to hold the players going out on the field and putting on that show accountable. No fight, no heart, none of it. They basically give up in those games. You know, they fought back in this game against Memphis, but they still didn't get the job done. There's not a single guy, it seems like, in that locker room that's going to take control of the situation and demand the best out of their players. Coaches can only do so much. I will say a lot of everything that goes wrong in a football program or really any sport, the coaches are made the fall guys. Well, at some point, it's time for the players to show up, to put up or shut up. It's time for the players to show some heart on Florida State and string some games together. Because Mike Norvell's a good coach. Mike Norvell rebuilt that program already. Mike Norvell doesn't need to prove a damn thing. He doesn't. In my opinion, Mike Norvell should be spared from this BS that's going around Florida State. It's time for the players to show up. It's time for DJU to step up, being a former 5-star quarterback and completely shitting the bed right now. Take control of your damn locker room. That's what I say to any of those players. Take control of that damn locker room and string something together. Do it for your damn coach. He goes out there during those press conferences and takes the blame for everything, when in reality, it's Florida State's fucking problem. Sorry for cursing, but I get heated when I see people talk smack on Mike Norvell or people saying he should be on the hot seat. No, he shouldn't be on the damn hot seat because he rebuilt that program once. It's time for the players to play and have some heart. And then Texas A&M over the Florida Gators. Billy Napier should be fired. He really should. Unlike Florida State, the product on the field is a result of Billy Napier, mainly, and he also calls out his fan base. It seems like nothing's improving. I don't know why Graham Mertz is still the starting quarterback. There's just 1,000,001 things wrong with Florida. Florida might be worse than FSU in my opinion, just because at least Florida State, they somewhat show heart towards the end of games. Somewhat. I noticed some of them play hard. The Gators, it seems like Billy Napier is just in over his head and is just flat out garbage. So A&M beats Florida 33-20. And for all intents and purposes, Billy Napier will probably be fired before the end of the year, maybe even before next weekend. All right, so here's my updated Heisman watch. I had Ashton Jeanty a week ago at number 1. I'm going to move him back to number 2. Cam Ward is by far the favorite right now. Cam Ward from Miami, Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. Then we're going to go still Quinn Ewers. He's still in the mix, even though he got hurt. Then Travis Hunter, then Jeremiah Smith. 2 other guys that are making noise. Obviously, Dylan Gabriel's coming back. He's making moves now at the starting quarterback for Oregon. You know who I'm going to put at 7? Because if Texas decides to go that way, Arch Manning. I'll put Arch Manning at the 7 best odds to win the Heisman. I don't think it's going to happen, but you know, we've seen crazier things happen. All right, now a couple games heading into week 4 for college football. Tennessee going on the road to Oklahoma. That's going to be a close game because I love Oklahoma's defense and I like Jackson Arnold, but I do think Tennessee is just playing another level of football right now compared to Oklahoma. Close game, but I'm going to take the Tennessee Volunteers winning 27-23. Cal going on the road to Florida State. I'm going to take Florida State because that's a 1,000-mile flight. That's a long way to travel from California all the way to Tallahassee. That's a long cross-country flight. Believe me, I've flown cross-country. I'm not an athlete, I wasn't an athlete when I was traveling across the country for that, but going on vacation, you know, jet lag is a real thing. If I'm Cal, I don't want to go to Florida State. I think Florida State gets back on track, gets their first win against the Cal Golden Bears. Utah on the road to Oklahoma State. I'm going to take the Utes. I'm going to take Cam Rising and that potent offense and that potent passing attack to go on the road and beat Oklahoma State. I'll say this game, a little bit higher scoring. I'll go a 33-28 sort of kind of game. My alma mater, Youngstown State, is going on the road to Pitt. Go Youngstown State. We're going to go into Pitt and beat the brakes off them. Let's go. Go Gwins, baby. Go Gwins. I can see, is it possible YSU will win? Yeah. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they'll have it ready. Penguins all the way. Penguins are going to beat Pitt 21-14. No, 21-20. That's how I'm going to see it. And then we got USC going on the road to Michigan. I think USC, like Texas from a week ago, is going to go into Michigan and beat them. But I think it'll be a little bit closer just because out with Warren and with Orgy for Michigan at quarterback position. I think they'll be run a little bit better, but I still think Lincoln Riley is a fantastic coach, and I said it from day one. Everybody was dogging on me for it. Miller Moss is the real deal. Miller Moss, I think, is going to end up putting himself in Heisman conversation, and USC is already making waves in the Big Ten for how they've been playing and their updated defense. They're playing a different level of football. This is the best defense that Lincoln Riley has ever had under his head coaching tenure, whether that be at Oklahoma or now at USC. So I'm going to take USC to win. I'm going to go with a 31-20 game. It'll be closer than the Texas game because Texas is just better all the way around than USC, but I'll still take USC. Okay, time to move into the NFL. Quick recap, and then we'll get into some of the stories I want to talk about in the NFL. So the Bills beat the Dolphins 31-10 on Thursday Night Football. The Saints beat Dallas 44-19, which is, I can't wait to talk about that. Saints beat Dallas 44-19. The Buccaneers beat the Lions 20-16. The Jets beat the Titans 24-17. The Vikings beat the Niners 23-17. The Raiders beat the Ravens 26-23. The Cardinals beat the Rams 41-10, and the Steelers beat the Broncos 13-6. Now, obviously, I didn't get to all the games. Some others, you got the Packers over the Colts, 16-10. Seahawks beat the Patriots. Commanders beat the Giants. Chargers beat the Panthers, but everybody beats the Panthers. And then the Browns beat the Jaguars. How about that? And then the Chiefs kick a last-second field goal to beat the Bengals, of course. And then the Texans beat the Bears on Sunday Night Football. But this has been the day of the upset, apparently. Making my bets on FanDuel, I should have took all the underdogs. Like, literally. I was thoroughly shocked with how many games ended lopsidedly. Like, the Saints going into Dallas and beating them by 30? No clue where that came from. The Buccaneers going on the road to beat the Lions. I could have saw that coming because... Not saw that coming, but Baker Mayfield and Tampa Bay, that's a good team. That is a good team. I know I picked Atlanta to win the division, but I'm starting to have second thoughts on that because how well the Saints are playing and how well the Buccaneers are playing. Panthers are god-awful. Panthers are the basement of the NFL. They're going to be garbage the entire year. They'll probably get the number 1 overall pick. I know I said New England was going to fight for that. New England's scrappy. New England's a decently run team. They're very scrappy, especially on the defensive side. I know they lost to Geno Smith and the Seahawks this past weekend, but they still play with a lot of heart. That's a tough team to go against. I wouldn't want to go against New England on any given Sunday. You know, they're decently run. But that entire division is going to be a dogfight other than Carolina. Falcons, Saints, and Buccaneers, it's going to be a dogfight. So we got the Jets. Aaron Rodgers finally getting his first win against the Tennessee Titans. Not really that special, but hey, Jets, Jets. Vikings, Sam Darnold showing out his first 2 games as the starter for Minnesota. They end up beating The 49ers 23-17. Raiders and Gardner Minshew going into Baltimore, winning 26-23. The Cardinals stomping the Rams 41-10. Kyler Murray turning back the clock to 2 years before the stories about him playing Call of Duty all the time come out. Like, wow. And then the Steelers win, baby, win. 13-6 over the Broncos. So some of the stories we're going to talk about. Tua Tagovailoa suffers another concussion after Thursday night's loss to the Buffalo Bills. So let's get this clear. Do I think Tua should retire? Possibly, because you have to take concussions very seriously and into consideration for long-term health. It is no secret to what CTE has done to some players in the past and possibly in the future. It is something that you all have to take into consideration if you are a professional athlete. Even my time as a college athlete, even though it was a brief time, I had 2 concussions in the span of a month. And I had 2 of them my senior year in high school, either 1 or 2. I do remember at least having 1 in high school my senior year. But when it comes to concussions and what we now know about concussions and the severity of them for later on in life, I know what Tua should do, but I think we all know what he's going to do. He's going to do his damnedest best to try and get back out on the football field. And I really liked what Colin Cowherd on The Herd had to say, that every team should probably have a certain clause in their contracts that allow players to get paid their money if like a career-ending injury or something unorthodox happens, where it protects the player, they get their money, but it also does not go against the team's salary cap. So I forget what kind of clause that's called. I can't believe I blanked out thinking about that, but regardless, Tua has to really consider whether he wants to put the helmet back on. It's not something you can really joke around with. And also, it's just the fact that how serious he's had concussions and how serious his previous ones were. If we all remember that game last year against Cincinnati when he took that big hit his head on the ground, and his fingers were basically paralyzed. Yeah, that's no joke. Should Tua retire? Probably. That's just that. But I'm not going to make decisions for someone else. I can simply say what I would do if I had that stream of concussions and, that level of, hurt going through my body and my head for all those years. I probably would retire. I mean, it is one of the reasons I stopped playing football in college, is because concussions. Like I said, I had 2 of them in the span of a month. So I decided, no, time to hang up the cleats. It's up to Tua. We'll see where he goes from there. We'll see. Sam Darnold, his first 2 games as the Vikings quarterback, has really showed out. Let's be honest. I said this years ago and I said this a couple weeks ago, where I would have Sam Darnold over Brock Purdy. Everybody called me a dumbass and called me stupid and called me crazy. Well, Sam Darnold showed out against the 49ers. Brock Purdy shit the bed. That's the reality of it. The 49ers are not the same team without Christian McCaffrey. They are not the same team. As much as people want to say this is the perfect system, Kyle Shanahan's system, they have the perfect quarterback in that system, they have the perfect weapons for that system. Yeah, maybe. But you are missing the biggest component of that team, and that's Christian McCaffrey, and this week showed it. They miss McCaffrey badly. He's on IR. Screws my fantasy team, of course. But going forward, Brock Purdy didn't play. He didn't play terrible in this game. He had 319 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. They were still able to run the ball for 100 yards against Minnesota. But Minnesota is still a formidable team. Brock Purdy has not beaten Minnesota yet. Brock Purdy's 2-2 against Minnesota. So going forward, They need McCaffrey back. I just don't see the same amount of juice with this team without McCaffrey. That's how important he is. Caleb Williams, through the first 2 weeks of the season, not terrible. He's 1-1. But one thing I am concerned about is his accuracy. Even in college, his last year, he took a big-time dip when it came to accuracy. Last week, he threw below 50%. This week, around roughly the same. Let me double-check that, just because, for sake of argument, I really want to see, how well Caleb Williams did. I watched the game, but I don't remember the stats. Okay, so his completion percentage was a little bit better. He was 23 of 37, not below 50%, but damn near close to 50%. No touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He played a lot worse in regards to throwing the football. From an accuracy standpoint, he was better. But he has no touchdown passes on the year. And now 2 interceptions. He had a passer rating of 51. I'm very concerned about Caleb Williams. I think he will right the ship eventually. It's a different speed. It's a different game. From high school to college, college to pro, it is always an adjustment. Some quarterbacks handle it better than others. As we all saw last year, C.J. Stroud seemed to make that transition effortlessly. And now going forward, I think Caleb Williams is going to take more time to get there. I think he's going to take more time getting used to NFL speed and NFL defenses. I'd say it's a very difficult change of pace when from time in high school to college, he was the best player on the field. Well, guess what? Now in the NFL, you are not the best athlete on the field. You got defensive ends and defensive tackles and linebackers that run faster than you and hit harder than anybody at USC was ever going to do to you. Is he going to succeed no matter what? I still think he will, because I think he needs these growing pains. I think all quarterbacks need them. But I will say it's very concerning. One final story. Let's talk about the beautiful, beautiful Dallas Cowboys. What in the hell was that performance? Losing to the Saints 44-19 in their home opener. Dak Prescott went 27 of 39, 293 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, and a passer rating of 78.3. And then in the other side, Derek Carr looks like he's turning the page back to his Raider days. 11 of 16, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns. 1 pick was a BS pick. It went right off of Chris Olave's hands, which it's fine. And then you got Alvin Kamara, 20 carries, 115 yards rushing, and 3 touchdowns. And then you had Rashid Shaheed, 4 receptions, 96 yards, and a touchdown. And Kamara also added 65 receiving yards and another touchdown. He had 4 touchdowns in this game. Dallas is really good against garbage opponents, aren't they? That's $60 million a year for Dak Prescott's looking better and better each and every week. Where are you going to go from here, Dallas? Where are you going to go from here? I'll tell you where Dallas is going to go. I'll tell you exactly where they're going to go. They're going to right the ship this year. They're going to win 11, 12 games maybe. They're going to go to the playoffs. They're going to get a wild card berth. And then their asses are going to get sent home. Like usual, like how it happens every single year. How about Derek Carr and the New Orleans Saints? They're going to be formidable this year. Like I said, that entire division with the Saints, the Panthers, the Falcons, and the Buccaneers, it's going to be a dogfight till the end, I think. But right now, I'd give the nod to the Saints, especially after going on the road and slaughtering Dallas. So how about them Cowboys, as Stephen A. would say? How about them Cowboys? Crazy time for football. Crazy, crazy time. And we're all here for it. I know everybody is here for it, especially me, especially everybody that loves to bet on sports too. I should have really took all the underdog bets this week in the NFL. But there's the reality of Dallas, is that you pay Dak Prescott $60 million a year. It's really showing that you don't have much depth on the wide receiving position and at the running back position, and you're going to need to shore up the offensive line a little bit more. And that's going to wrap it up this week on The Lake Show, everyone. I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day. Keep the likes and subscribes coming in. We're almost at 200. And again, I'm very thankful for all of you for making me a part of your day. I'm your host, Dominic Lakeo. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's